If you're building an info business, you're showing up consistently and you're posting stories, but growth still feels inconsistent, this video is for you. My name is Miguel. I work with info businesses owners to turn Instagram stories into a system that builds momentum, not random spikes, not lucky weeks, momentum you actually rely on. Today, I'm going to walk you through the stories funnel blueprint. This isn't theory, it's a clear framework you can actually apply to your business to understand why your stories aren't moving people and what needs to change. By the end of this masterclass, you'll know exactly which part of your stories is breaking momentum and what to fix first. Let's start with the reality most founders live in. You're active, you post, you try to stay consistent, you're not lazy, you're not missing work ethic. Some days you get views that look decent, you get replies, you get little spikes of attention, you feel like something is happening. But when you zoom out, one week feels good, next week is flat, then you push harder, then it spikes, but then it dies again. So you do what most founders do when they don't have clarity. They add more stories, more ads, more content, more effort, more complexity, and that creates the most dangerous situation in business. You become basic while staying uncertain. Now, if you sell high ticket, you feel this even harder because high ticket requires trust at a different level. People can watch you and still not take you seriously. People can reply and still not commit. People can like you and still not move. And then you end up in a loop. You're constantly warming your audience, but you never feel like you're building anything stable. You keep feeding attention, but attention doesn't turn into momentum. And that's why so many info businesses get stuck at the same ceiling. Not because they lack effort, not because the offer is bad, but because what they are doing daily isn't building a predictable path. And the right question is not about what should I post today, it's what I'm building over time. That's literally the difference between the people who post and the people who scale. Stories are not the extra thing you throw on Instagram. Stories are where trust is built daily. Stories are where belief are formed. Stories are where decisions get made. And this is literally the closest thing you have to a daily relationship with your audience. And when that relationship has no structure, attention leaks. People watch, then forget, then they reply, but then they disappear. They get excited, then reset. That's what momentum dying looks like. So I built a system. It's called a stories funnel. And the clean definition is, a stories funnel is a structured path inside the stories that move people through 4 stages. Attention, trust, desire, and action. When you build that path properly, stories stop resetting and momentum starts building. You stop relying on luck weeks, you start relying on structure. Before I break down the blueprint, I want to ensure this is something concrete. One of the cleanest examples is Abu. Before Abu was doing around 23k a month. The business worked, the offer worked, the audience was there. The issue was that results weren't stacking the way they should. It looked active, but it didn't build fast enough. So we made one shift. We stopped treating stories like casual updates and installed a stories funnel, a structured path inside stories that move people toward a decision. After applying the stories funnel, we went from 23k a month to 23k in just 4 days. Same audience, same offer, same business, different structure. Now let's get to the blueprint. The stories funnel is built in 6 phases and the order matters. So I'm going to walk you through the same sequence I use with my clients, and then you can spot where momentum is dying in your business. Let's start with phase 1. Phase 1 is ICP clarity. If the buyer is blurry, your stories will be blurry. This is the foundation that most people skip because it doesn't feel exciting, but it's the part that decides everything downstream. Stories don't create action because you wrote something clever. Stories create action because the right person feels understood. So your job in phase 1 is to make the buyer specific. You need to know who they are, what outcome they want most, what problem blocks that outcome, why now matters, what they've already tried, why it didn't work. And the piece most founders miss is belief. What do they believe today that keeps them stuck? Because that belief is what your stories are really fighting. Here's how you can tell your ICP is weak. You start sounding generic, you start talking to everyone, you start trying to be broadly relatable. And when you do that, you might still get views, but you won't get movement. Because nothing feels personal. The standard for phase 1 is simple. Your viewer should read your stories and think, this is me. If they don't think that, you haven't earned attention that turns into action. Once ICP is clear, phase 2 becomes obvious. Phase 2 is messaging angles. Angles are what make you consistent without sounding repetitive. Most founders run out of ideas because they are trying to invent content every day. That's not a system. Angles give you control. Instead of waking up and asking, what should I post today? You wake up and choose an angle intentionally. I look at angles as are repeatable lanes. For example, we have pain and friction. What they're tired of, what's costing them time, money, and energy, desire and outcome, what they want, what they dream about, what they are chasing, objections and belief, the reason they don't move yet, the stories they tell themselves. And finally, proof and contrast, the difference between what most people do, what actually works baked by evidence. When you have angles, you stop being random. You will a message that repeats in a way that feels new each time. And repetition is not weakness. Repetition is how belief is built. If your audience hears the same core truth from multiple angles, they're trusting you faster. That's phase 2. In phase 3, we turn the message into a structure inside stories. Phase 3 is purpose. Every story's flow needs one purpose. A lot of founders lose momentum because they mix everything together. They try to be personal, they teach, they show wins, sell, ask questions, post updates, all inside one messy flow. And the audience doesn't know how to process it. Purpose fixes that. For example, with connection is where you build familiarity and comfort. Niche is where you speak directly to the right buyer. You filter, the wrong people feel like it's not for them, the right people feel target. Authority is where you will believe in how you think, not by claiming expertise but by showing standards, framing, and how you see problems. And finally, sales is where movement happens, not by pressure, not by spam, a clean next step. When each flow has one purpose, your stories stop feeling like a diary and start feeling like direction. Now we move into the core. Phase 4. Phase 4 is scripts. This is where momentum is win or lost. Scripting doesn't mean writing paragraph, it means controlling progression. A strong stories script has one job: keep attention, build belief, move the person forward. I structure scripts like a sequence of decisions. Point: one clear idea, not 3, not 5. 1. Proof: something that makes the point believable. A result, a story, a comparison, a contrast, a clean insight. Bridge: why this matters to them, how it connects to their situation. And finally, the next step. You make it easy to continue. You don't dump everything, you guide attention forward. And the rules that matter are simple and non-negotiable. One idea per frame, because mobile attention is fragile. Clarity beats clever, because confusion makes people tap out. Every frame earns the next, because you're guiding attention, not publishing thoughts. When scripts are built with progression, people don't just watch, they move mentally. They start thinking differently, and when someone thinks differently, action becomes easier. Now, even if your scripts are strong, there's one factor that can kill conversion, and that factor is phase 5, perception. Design isn't decoration. In stories, it's persuasion. If your stories look casual, you'll be priced as casual. This is why two people can say the same thing and get totally different outcomes. One looks premium, the other one looks random. Premium perception is not about being flashy, it's about being easy to read, clean, consistent, and intentional. Fast readability, clean spacing, consistency across frames, a visual rhythm that makes it feel structured. When perception is right, trust builds faster. When trust builds faster, decisions get easier. Now, phase 6 is where momentum becomes movement. Phase 6 is the next step, the CTA. A flow with no next step is entertainment. A flow with a clean next step creates movement. The rule is simple: one flow, one CTA. Because the moment you give people multiple paths, you create friction. The goal isn't more interaction, the goal is a clean path forward. Sometimes that path is a conversation, sometimes it's a link, but the principle stays the same. The next step has to be obvious. When these 6 phases are built in order, stories stop resetting. Here's how you can self-diagnose quickly. If your stories feel random, your ICP or angles are weak. If your stories get watched but nothing builds, your purpose or scripts are weak. If people watch but don't move, your perception or next step is weak. The point is not to do more, The point is to fix the right phase. Alright, now I'm going to be direct. At this point, you probably understand the blueprint, and you probably also see the real problem. It's not that you don't post, it's that your stories don't build. And when the stories don't build, you're paying for it every week, whether you release it or not. Here's the cost of not having a stories funnel. You leak attention, people watch you today and forget you tomorrow, you warm them up, then you reset the relationship again next week. You spend hours showing up and you still end up guessing what to say. And the most expensive part is this. You're sitting on buyers and you're not converting them. Not because they aren't interested, because the path isn't built. Now think about the gap. If your stories had a structure, you wouldn't need lag weeks. More people will keep watching, more of the right people will reply with intention, more conversations will move forward without you forcing it. High ticket will feel lighter because perception will match the price. That's the gap. Right now, you're running stories like content. What you need is stories as infrastructure, because the same audience you already have can produce a completely different outcome when the system exists. You saw it in the book case. Same audience, different structure. And here's where most founders get stuck. They understand the framework, then they go back to improvising next week, because execution without a structure turns into guessing again. So I built a bridge. It's called a Stories Funnel Program. It's a program designed to help you install this system into your business so your stories stop resetting and start building. If your stories been feeling like you're posting a lot but leaving money on the table, this is for you. Because when attention doesn't turn into momentum, revenue stays inconsistent. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more expensive it gets. In time, in missed buyers, in money you don't get back. Here's what I want you to do next. DM me on Instagram and I'll look at your story through the blueprint you just learned. Pinpoint where momentum is breaking and tell you what's costing your results right now. If it's a fit, it'll show you what it looks like to implement a stories funnel properly into your business.